Hello guys, and welcome to my Bowplar Templar build video. So we've got quite a feisty little opening clip for you guys here. We're going to start off by saying archers are best in the tower, and I mean that when I say it. Just look at the amount of damage we can do from this tower. So this is a Bowplar Templar build, guys. This is very, very different from what you would normally see from a Templar in PvP. The playstyle on this build is incredibly distance-oriented, so you're going to do a lot of kiting and a lot of fighting your opponent at that distance. This build really excels when you can use your terrain and you can use your speed and your incredible amount of distance damage to split your opponents apart and really hit them hard where it hurts. Now, I want to also say that this is not a heavy armor Templar build. If you play this the same way that you're used to playing your heavy armor Templar build, I guarantee you will not be successful on it. This is a completely different play style, and I just feel like it's important that I say that at the beginning of the video because I get comments all the time from people saying this build would be terrible against good players, yada yada yada, and I'm like, yeah, if you were gonna play it face to face like a heavy armor build, it would be freaking terrible against a heavy armor build. But if you show that heavy armor build your strengths, which is your speed and distance fighting, he probably won't even touch you. So that's the whole point here, is that this is a very different style of playing, and if you really want to see what it looks like, keep your mind open and go check out the PvP portion of this video. Half of this video is PvP footage with commentary behind it, so you can get a really good feel for what this build looks like to play in PvP and how you can be very successful with it as well. But you have to be open to trying that new style. Let's jump into it. So we are playing a Bowplar Templar, guys. So this is a different style of build. It's very kitey, so if you're not used to the kitey gameplay, then you'll have to adjust how you play your character for this build. Otherwise, you will not find success with it. That's kind of the first warning I'm going to give you. It's a different style of gameplay, and if you don't adjust accordingly, you will not be successful with it. So you have to kind of play the style that we're going for. So let's take a look at these stats here. We're starting on our main bow. Yes, that's right. We're running bow, so we have a main hand bow and an offhand bow. We've got just about 24.5k HP, so a great HP pool. Almost 12k magicka, great magicka pool as well to work with for a stam build, and 30k stamina, so pretty low on the max stamina as well, but this is a very weapon damage heavy build, and that's why our max stamina pool is a little bit lower. If we look at our recovery stats, we've got over 1k magicka recovery, almost 600 health recovery, and over 1700 stamina recovery. So the recoveries on this build are actually pretty great too. You'll notice that the magicka recovery is pretty high for a stamina build, whereas our stamina recovery is usually a little bit lower. People like to sit in that 2k range when they play a stamina build, especially in PvP. Now, the reasoning for this is that a magicka is a big part of our survivability on this build, so we actually don't need to spend a huge amount of stamina to stay alive, and we'll get into that as we go through the build. Our weapon damage unbuffed, we're sitting at 3,116. I'm going to roll dodge, I'm going to chug the pot and buff for you. And we're sitting, oh, hold on, I did not drink the pot. There it is, and we'll do the roll dodge, so we buff off of our defensive bow. We've got 4,240 weapon damage. Now, this is not including the infused enchant on our Senche bow. This brings the total weapon damage on this build up to 4.9k, and we're also sitting at 62.6% critical chance on top of that as well. So we've got a huge amount of weapon damage and a huge crit chance on this build. So we can actually deal quite a lot of distance damage. You see my stamina recovery getting buffed up a little bit from the potion too, so that's going to help you out a little bit. So we've got quite a bit of weapon damage on this build and a huge amount of crit. So this build has surprisingly high damage at a distance, so that's something to keep in mind about this build and kind of why it's so effective at this kitey distance gameplay, because it can deal huge amounts of damage at that distance. For our physical and spell resist, we are not looking so bad on this spec either. 20k spell resistance, 17.8k physical resist, so it's pretty standard for medium armor. Not bad at all though. And then finally we have 1886 critical resistance. Also a little bit on the low end. Most people like to sit above 2k for PvP, but a big part of why our crit resist is a little bit lower is because we're running a lot of well-fitted to help buff up our weapon damage to that 4.9k weapon damage value. Taking a look at our buffs on our character right now, we are running the Warrior Mundus here. It's a kind of a toss-up on this build between the Warrior and the Shadow. The Shadow ultimately is going to result in more damage and more healing, but in a PvP situation, the Shadow will result in, I think, a little bit less outgoing damage and a little bit more healing, whereas the Warrior is going to give you a better balance of the both. So it's kind of up to you which one you want to go for. If you are attacking a target with no impen, Shadow is obviously the best option, but most opponents in PvP will have impen. I'm a stage 4 vampire. This is very important. We use quite a few vampire skills on this build. Minor Berserk coming from my Slimecraw. And for the food that we're using Orzorga's Smoked Bear Haunch. This is going to give us the max health bonus and then a bonus to our health, magicka, and stamina recoveries. This is very important. I think Orzorga's Smoked Bear Haunch is one of the best foods in the game, and it really helps for this build. It really helps for that magicka sustain especially, as well as giving you a little bit of health recovery. Now, the health recovery as a vampire is something that you wouldn't normally care much about, but due to the fact that mist form cuts off your healing, health recovery can actually be a bit of a saving grace when you're in your mist form, because it'll heal you for quite a bit while you're taking that in that mist form taking that reduced incoming damage. Your health recovery can actually tick for higher than the incoming damage at certain points, depending on how much health recovery you have. So it's not a huge amount that we have here, but it does end up helping out. So the Orzorga Smoked Bear Haunch plays into that as well. So let's take a look at the gear we're running on this build. You're going to recognize these gear sets from my previous build that I had posted, which was Ghost. And it's very similar gear here. It's actually the same gear minus a weapon change. We've got the Senche set on our off bar. And what this is going to do is give us a big weapon damage bonus when we roll dodge. And then we've also got the Senche in our rings and necklaces. I was fortunate enough to get the gold jewelry a long time ago for quite a cheap price, but purple is much more economic, I think. And then finally, we've got one-piece Senche in our belt here as well. And this is a well-fitted piece. So we're running Senche on our off bar with infused on our enchant here. So the infused bow, if you fire an arrow and then roll dodge forward and swap to your other bow, you're going to effectively increase your weapon damage by 1k. That's a huge amount of weapon damage to get from just shooting one arrow and roll dodging. So this is how you're going to kind of buff your build to hit that big combo that you want to hit. So on our main hand bow, we've got the Nirnhoned bow of Hundings Rage. Ideally, I would say that Hundings Rage is the best bet for this, due to the fact that Transmutations brought in sets like Automaton, Hulking Draugr, etc. are very attractive choices for something like this. However, Hundings Rage, of course, is giving you that crit chance, and we are playing a bow build, which innately has 5% more crit than other stamina builds, excluding maybe a dual-wield player using daggers. So this comes in really handy, the Hundings Rage. I think it synergizes really well with the bow build, and on top of that, it's also going to be great for your healing. As you can see for the gear here, we have the rest of our Hundings Rage pieces. And we've put Hacky Joe enchants on all of our big pieces here. This is to help buff up our maximum health, our max magicka, and our max stamina. I think that the max health and the max magicka are quite worthwhile giving up that little bit of extra stamina, especially on this build where we're using a lot of magicka abilities to stay alive, and the max health also coming in real handy to prevent us from getting bursted down easily. The final set that we have in here is Slimecraw. You guys could have guessed it. This is for, of course, a little bit more weapon crit, and as well that Minor Berserk, which is going to increase our outgoing damage by 8%. One of, if not the most important offensive buffs that you can put on your character in this game is Minor Berserk, and I absolutely love it on a Templar. Templar synergizes really well with it due to the fact that it doesn't have the Minor Berserk, and it really benefits from going a crit build route. So Slimecraw, one of my favorite sets, and that's what I'm running here. For the traits on the gear, guys, we are running 5 pieces of well-fitted and 2 pieces of impenetrable. And that's why I said we've got the 2-piece impens. That's why our crit resist is a little lower. Well-fitted is very important for this build for 2 reasons. Number 1, roll dodge to stay alive. Number 2, roll dodge to buff your outgoing damage as well as your healing. So there you have it. Well fitted. I would highly recommend 5 well fitted, 2 impen. If you're uncomfortable running that little impen, just give it a shot. I mean, you're going to get hit a little harder, but the whole point of playing a build like this is to kite your opponent and not allow them to land those big combos that can take you down. And as you can see on our little pieces here, we've just got plain old max stamina enchants. If you want to hacky Joe these, you totally can, but I would recommend, for the sake of saving your money, only hacky Joe the big pieces. It's up to you if you want to do the little ones. For the enchants on our necklace and our rings, we've got 1 stamina recovery and 2 weapon damage. Now, we could always go more weapon damage here in favor of more glass cannon, but for PvP, I think that the 1 stamina recovery really helps out, especially with the kind of changes that we've had in Morrowind patch, with sustain getting nerfed pretty hard, and we've got to put a lot more into sustain than we used to. So that's where that stamina recovery glyph is going to come in real handy. So let's take a look at the skills that we're using today, guys. We're going to start on our offensive bar, and this is our main hand bow, the one that we can get up to that 4.9k weapon damage on. Our first ability that we have here is Silver Shards. So this is going to be not only our spammable ability that we use when we need a spammable, it also doubles as an AoE, because it will split and fire 5 additional bolts at nearby enemies for almost 50% of the outgoing damage. On top of it, it also will snare everything that it hits by 40% for 6 seconds. So this is a very good utility skill, has a lot of usage on this build, especially a bow build, and the crossbow looks really sweet. We can't play a double bow build without including a crossbow in it. Seriously. Finally, guys, slotting this skill is also going to give us 3% additional weapon damage on this bar, which you can see we are running Flawless Dawnbreaker, so we're pushing that weapon damage as high as we can on this bar. The next ability we have here is Lethal Arrow. Now, Lethal Arrow versus Focused Aim. I went with Lethal Arrow, and I'm not regretting it at all. The Major Defile is a huge deal. The Major Defile really helps for killing things like those Wardens that don't stop spamming trees, those Templars that don't stop spamming Breath of Life. Pretty much anything that heals itself is going to have a tough time dealing with Lethal Arrows. The only thing that isn't really affected by things like this are heavy shield stacker builds that don't necessarily rely on that much incoming healing power. But Lethal Arrow is one of your most important skills because it allows you to set a very deadly combo. You're going to use this ability in conjunction with a light or partial charged heavy attack into, for example, Silver Shards or even our Binding Javelin, and that's going to allow all those attacks to land at roughly the same time, giving you that really heavy burst from a distance. And that's kind of what this build is all about. The next ability we have is Repentance, one of my favorite Templar skills. This is the one ability on this build that I say you could switch out for something else. I like having it because it's really helpful for PvP. Things are dying all the time. Repentance comes in so handy. That being said, you could switch it out for another skill if you wanted. This is one of the least important skills on the build. This is kind of just a personal preference of mine, having played so much Stamina Templar. Can't go without Repentance. It's nice because it gives us a little bit of a boost to our recoveries as well while we're on our offensive bar, and of course the resource return. The next ability is Resolving Vigor. This is our only heal on the build. That's right, you heard me right. So that's why I said if you want to switch out another skill for perhaps the bow heal, Draining Shot, which I'm not running on this build, you could switch out Repentance for Draining Shot to give you a more reliable heal, whereas and reliable burst heal, whereas Vigor is going to be a very strong heal over time, but if you're taking a really intense amount of damage, it's not going to save you. That being said, though, the Vigor on this build does quite a lot. If we look at the buffed up tooltip on Vigor, not including my attack, the 600 extra weapon damage, we get up to that 18k tooltip, so almost a 19k tooltip if we had a full buff on our Vigor. So it's a very, very strong Resolving Vigor. Yeah, it heals quite a bit. The next ability we have is Binding Javelin. This is our primary stun. I like this ability a lot because 41 meters distance, 8 meter knockback, both of which are really great for this build because we are playing a bow spec that deals increased damage as we are further away from our target. On top of it, slotting this skill is an Adric Spear skill, and what that's going to do is increase all of our critical damage on this bar by 10%. Also very important because we have that 60% crit rate on this build. So there you see it all kind of working in together. For the ultimate on this build, I went with Flawless Dawnbreaker on the main bar. You guys could have guessed why. That 5% bonus weapon damage plus 3% for being a Fighter's Guild skill plus the 3% off Silver Shard means that we are getting a total of 11% increased weapon damage on our main bar. That's great. That's quite a bit. I would say that equates to around 5% increased damage, so you cannot be upset with that. Flawless Dawnbreaker, of course, deals a pretty decent amount of damage on this build as well. The big kind of issue with it is that it's a melee skill, and this is a bow build, so you will not get many opportunities to drop your Flawless Dawnbreaker. That being said, when someone's right in front of your face, it's a really great counter spike, especially if you throw a javelin at someone, snipe them, light attack into Flawless Dawnbreaker. That is a huge amount of burst damage that you can drop on someone in melee distance on this build, so it's pretty cool. I like having that melee ability, at least one of them. Okay, so let's take a look at our other bar here. This is our buff bar. So we've got a few offensive skills on here and mostly defensive skills. So let's start with the first offensive skill, Poison Injection. Poison Injection's great. It's not only going to deal pretty decent upfront damage, it's not terrible, but that damage over time is really what makes Poison Injection awesome, which increases dramatically as their health begins to drop below 50%. Poison Injection, more often than not on this build, has been that last little 2-3k of damage that resulted in my target dying, so it's very important to dot your target up on this spec before you start trying to combo them down. The next ability that we have is Power of the Light. Now, this is similar to Poison Injection. This is an ability that we're going to use to dot our opponent up before we deal that heavy combo. So we're going to use both these abilities in conjunction together and then swap to our offensive bar and hit them as hard as we can with a combo, which will result in a powerful Power of the Light explosion and then hopefully a strong Poison Injection tick to take the target down if they have any life left. Power of the Light's great for a couple reasons. Number one, it deals a little bit of upfront damage that is undodgeable. So if you have a target that's like roly-polying away and they're just on the last bit of their life and you just keep missing them because you're playing a ranged spec, this is an option of an attack that will not miss to give you that little bit of burst damage to take that target down. Power of the Light, of course, will stay on the target for 6 seconds, and it can copy the damage that you deal to them, resulting in a big burst at the end. It also afflicts the target with Minor Fracture and Minor Breach, reducing their physical spell resist by 1320. So these are really nice because these two attacks in conjunction with Snipe, which also puts a little bit of a dot by applying the poison damage effect, you put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 negative effects on a target, meaning that anything that isn't a Templar will not purge them all if they attempt to purge. They'll only purge a few of them. So it's great because it gives us access to quite a few negative effects to throw on the target. And then part of the Power of the Light as well, giving us that Minor Fracture, which is what we would have gotten if we had gone for the other morph of Snipe here. So Lethal Arrow, of course, being the good option there. For the next ability, we have Elusive Mist, one of my personal favorite skills to use on a Stamina Templar. This is going to be your get the fuck out of there skill. It saves your life. It really does. It's going to reduce your incoming damage taken by 75%. It'll give you Major Expedition for 4 seconds, which is 30% increased movement speed, and you're immune to all disabling effects and snares while you're in mist form. The downside to it is rather costly and it cuts your Magicka regen, but it's a fantastic getaway skill. It synergizes really well with a build like this that needs to be very kitey, spend its time in the, at a distance dealing that damage. The next ability we have is Extended Ritual. I've said this a million times and I'll say it a million more. This is one of Templar's best abilities. Extended Ritual is like a defining Templar skill. 5 harmful effects removed from yourself immediately. This includes damage over time, snares, eclipse, Power of the Lights, curses, all kinds of things can be purged. An absolutely fantastic skill. What really sets Stamina Templar apart from the other classes is access to Extended Ritual. So I would highly recommend this ability to help you get out of situations. Of course, we've got Elusive Mist for snares, etc., but Extended Ritual can also come in handy following up Elusive Mist to remove the dots and then go into a Vigor for some heals. And then finally, the last normal ability we have is Restoring Focus. This will grant you Major Resolve and Major Ward, increasing your physical and spell resist by 5,280. It also gives you Minor Vitality and Minor Protection, increasing your healing received and reducing the damage you take by 8%. This is just pretty much your tank rune. It's very cheap to put down. We have 1k Magicka recovery, so you don't have to worry about spamming it. You can put it down as often as you need, and it's going to keep you from dying. I mean, the amount of mitigation that this ability gives you alone is well worth it. On top of it, 8% bonus healing, so it comes in real handy. It gives us quite a powerful vigor in the end as well. So there you have it. And then finally, the last ability that we have here, guys, is Clouding Swarm. Now, they changed Clouding Swarm. They turned it into a teleport, so it's very different in the way that it functions now as it has in the past, where it used to make you invisible. I actually have really been enjoying using this ability on this build. I will say a few things about it, and I'll start off by saying it is not that great. It's a fun ultimate, allowing you to teleport. It's quite a decent distance on the teleport. I think it's around 40 meters in PvP, which is pretty, 30 meters or 34 meters or so, which is pretty good. And it's an instant teleport, similar to the Nightblade Shade. So you can really use it effectively against a group of players to kite and lose some of them, but outside of that, it doesn't really have that much use. You can spam it if you're low on resources to give you some kind of spammable attack once you go into the swarm, and it'll cost you nothing. But that's about it. I've really enjoyed using this ability on the bow build in particular for the kiting purpose. I can get behind a group of players without most of them noticing, and then reposition myself behind them and pick off whoever really follows me. So I've enjoyed using this ability, but I know it won't be for everybody. A lot of people will be very tempted to use the bow ultimate, the Ballista or even Toxic Barrage. I think Ballista would be the better bet for this build, because then you could Ballista into snipe and just absolutely wreck someone. So if you don't like the teleport on Clouding Swarm, I mean, give it a shot if you guys want to try it. It's a lot of fun to use, but it is tricky to use. If you don't like it, you can always go for the bow ultimate, which is a great choice as well, giving you huge amounts of burst damage. Let's do the champion points. So we're going to start in our green tree here. We've got 23 Warlord and 2 Sprinter. Warlord, of course, important. We got to break free. It's PvP. Sprinter, we got a couple points in. And that's just because we don't have a lot of points left over, and sprinting is not the most important. We also have a bunch of well-fitted on, so it's not a huge deal that we put points in there either. Okay, so for the lever tree, guys, we've got 56 in Mooncalf, 44 in Arcanist, 19 Tenacity, and then just 1 point left over to put in Healthy, so we get that Wind Running passive. Wind Running, of course, is a great passive. 2% movement speed can't really be overlooked, and the 10% health and Magicka recovery is pretty good while sprinting as well. Of course, when you're sprinting on this build, it's likely because you're going to want to go into Mist Form soon, so Magicka recovery coming in clutch there. We've got good Mooncalf and Arcanist, so good recoveries here. 12% stamina and 10% on Magicka. A little bit in tenacity as well for those heavy attacks, but this is just mostly for sustain. In the Shadow Tree, we've got 51 Tumbling for 19% roll dodge reduction. Big deal for this build. We do a lot of rolling. 13 in Shadow Ward for a little bit of block reduction. Does come in handy. And then finally 21 in Befouled for that big 20% healing debuff. So this is actually going to result in a 36% healing reduction from our snipe, as opposed to the 30% before. In the blue tree, we got 15 in Blessed for the Apprentice, just for a little bit of healing power. In the Atronach, we've got 56 Weapon Expert and 66 Master of Arms. So, of course, heavier focus on that direct damage, which is our single target attacks, so a lot more focus on that. And, of course, we do have a pretty heavy focus on that Physical Weapons Expert due to the fact that weaving is very important for this build. It's a ranged bow build. You have to be weaving on it to maximize your outgoing DPS. The important passive we're getting here is Tactician. When you roll dodge an attack, you set an opponent off balance. And that plays into here with Exploiter at 75 points. Increase your damage against off-balance targets by 10%. So that plays into it very well. We're going to be doing a lot of rolling. We're going to be setting a lot of people off balance when they attack us, which is awesome. In the Ritual Tree, we got 37 Mighty, 26 Piercing, and 30 Precise Strikes. More focus on Mighty here. I would say, like, go for a little bit more of an even spread on these if you can. I just have mine this way because of the diminishing returns on points. This is just kind of the way I put them in and liked it. But yeah, go for an even spread, about 33 points in each, or around 32 or 33 points in each would be even. So it's really up to you how you want to do it. In this steed tree, we've got 51 ironclad, 61 resistance, 6 spell shield, and 11 medium armor focus. Spell shield, medium armor focus, just to bulk up our resists a little bit. Earlier points, of course, being a lot heavier than later points, so we do want to not neglect our defense. As I've always said, a more well-rounded defense is usually better in ESO, and that's simply because you have a better defense against all incoming things. For Ironclad, we've got the 51 points. This is going to reduce our incoming damage from direct attacks by 19%, a direct counter to the Master at Arms passive here. So you want to make sure you invest points in that. Most of the bursty skills you get hit by are direct damage attacks, so this is going to help you survive that incoming burst. And then 61 in resistant for that big amount of crit resist, a lot in resistant here to give us quite a bit of that critical resistance because we don't have it in our gear. Just making up for it here. In the Lady Tree, we've got 23 in Hardy and 23 Elemental Defender, just to bulk up our defenses against incoming physical and magic damage. And then in the Lord Tree, 49 in Quick Recovery for that 11% healing, and 6 in Expert Defender, just because we had a few points left over and they didn't work out anywhere else. But it's nice to put a few points in here, reduce incoming heavy and light attack damage by 4%. And there you guys have it. Alright guys, so let's look at some PvP footage of the build. So like I said, this is not a heavy armor Templar. Don't play it like one or you will die. So this is what it looks like to play, so let's take a look at it. So here we are, just kind of like fencing on the outside of the group here. I pottle this guy, throw a hefty snipe javelin combo, and the other EP player actually goes in and finishes off the kill there. I decide to back out because I am not a close quarters fighter on this build. You're supposed to use your distance and pull your opponents apart. That's a real big part of this gameplay. Even more so now that we have since we're using just a bow for our main offense. So I put some pressure into that Templar. He goes into his block, pops his shield ult, and the AD kind of look at me, so I decide to run away back to this resource. Here's the snipe into the light attack javelin, light attack silver leash. Silver shards, and really nasty gank on that guy. But there you see it. So let's look back here. So we come back up the hill here. So we're a little bit behind the group. This guy doesn't really notice I'm shooting at him. A little bit of lag here, as you can see. I did get the AP tick long before his body actually hit the ground. But I was looking at his body, so I was a little confused as to why I didn't get the kill there. So these guys come at me on the hill here. I decide to go in behind them, use my Bat Swarm teleport to teleport through them, forcing them to turn around, and then I unfortunately take a CC, pull another teleport, and miss behind the rocks, and reposition myself back behind these guys. Here's the guy trying to res the first one I killed, a super nasty snipe light attack and javelin, and that guy just takes so much damage. A 12k snipe on that guy to bring him down. We see a healer here. We lead with a light attack into snipe, light attack, javelin, and absolutely nuke that guy too, and respond right away with going into our mist form. We do a double roll coming off the cliff here. I want to make sure to dodge all those incoming projectiles. Keep rolling as I come back here and hold block as I jump in. Now I pop back out and they decide to stay on the hill, so I just reposition myself back in the same spot here. AD is just going to continue to let me pick them off here. You see this guy here shuffles the javelin portion of the combo and manages to survive the shuffle, saving him that 15% of the time. And maybe not next time, though. The guy on the wall starts shooting at me. They're hilariously throwing the stealth detect at me. I know I'm running bow guys, but I'm not a Nightblade. I'm spitting out purges. This guy comes aggressive here. I open with a javelin on him into the snipe and make sure to dot him up with the pottle again. I go for another snipe into the Dawnbreaker. He tries to pull a double roll to get closer to me. Dawnbreaker being such a great counter to that. Light attack, snipe into the javelin, and just absolutely nuke that guy from full health to 0. Massive burst on him there. Taking a bit of pressure off from the wall here, so I come back behind this little cliff here, and I get a good stun off on this guy, a fully charged heavy attack, and I try to pottle him into the injection, take a stun from the other player there, hit my injection on the NPC instead of the target I meant to hit, and I decide that I'm taking a little bit too much pressure here. I've now got the 3 players on me. I go into the Bat Swarm, teleport behind them, and missed the other direction, forcing the turnaround, and I do it again, one more turnaround, and here you see I swap to the wrong bar. The right move there would have been to go right into my mist form after that teleport. But anyhow, let's get to the next clip. As you can see, I casually ride my horse into this tower. AD takes notice of this and decides to come find me. So let's see how this kind of plays out. I finally get found by this Templar. I just kind of walk around him a little bit, making sure that I've got some positioning here. He goes for the Eclipse on me, and I get a stun from the other player there. So I break the stun, bash his Radiant, which he opened with. Maybe not the best idea. Here he is opening with Radiant yet again. And I do a quick peel behind them using my speed. So this tower fight is going to be a good show of how this build kind of performs in more melee range combat. There you see, he predictably kept going for that Radiant. I get a stun off on him, which is just a minor disorient. Follow it with the Javelin for the 2 stuns in a row. Dawnbreaker to bring him down. Now both these players end up jumping down, and I decide the best move here is to pop a Vigor, do a couple rolls, let that Vigor heal me a bit, and then go right into the Mist form, not even worry about purging that curse as it's just going to explode in my Mist anyways. Move myself back up to the top of the tower, take a peek off the side. The dead player is now gone, so he was either rezzed or he respawned. I don't think he comes back. I think he just respawned. I try to put some pressure into that Templar there. Unfortunately, I end up missing my stun, and I don't actually get the knockback on him, take a lot of damage from him, and the Sork starts to hit me too. So here I'm just kind of repositioning myself. Like I've said many times, the goal here is to split your opponents up and to change direction a lot. Make yourself a difficult target. Here we see again, he goes for the channeled move in my face, and I'm going to bash him, follow it with the stun into the Dawnbreaker, and a very easy kill to take that guy down again. And that just goes to show you, try not to channel those abilities in people's faces. And this Sork decides to abandon ship after his buddy goes down. Here you see that long distance fighting skill on this build. Not the best call by that Sork to try to run away, because we absolutely nuke him. You still can do the close range fighting, but as you can see, it's much more difficult. You have to worry a lot more about kiting, and positioning is much more important. This Sork tries to go for the survival off the edge there, and I put a bit of damage into her, but I don't actually manage to finish her off. And then I just continue to get kind of hit by these yellow here. They're just coming 1 or 2 or 3 at a time. But I'm continuing to move around. The big point here is movement. Maintain that constant movement. If you're going to hold still, make sure it's in a position where no one knows where you are. And if anyone sees you, you got to start moving again. So here you see, I'm trying to go for this target in the middle here because he's just kind of holding still. And I get a really nasty Fire Staff stun from behind, I believe. I roll back through them, changing directions, of course, to make sure that they cannot stay on top of me. Go through these gates here, hug the pole, and then what I'm going to do is run right through them again and then go back into mist form. This is just a great tactic here to keep them split up. I don't want to let them focus me down really hard. And there you see it again, we're sprinting through them. Important part of these splits is that by the time they see my character, I'm already running in the direction towards them. They don't see me and then I turn around. I've already turned around and changed directions by the time they notice that I'm going a different way, and I take a jump out of the keep, and that's the end of that fight. That's where I end up cutting the clip. So let's continue on. So this fight here is another kind of great look at the kite gameplay of this build. Here you see I tried to go for a res. The Nightblade jumps on top of me, and I just use my distance on him. I get the stun on him, kite him back, and bait him into that really strong Dawnbreaker combo with my snipe and Pottle, and he goes down really fast. Cheeky little Javelin to try to prevent the stun there. I think I actually landed the Javelin. The camera ends up spinning away, but I think I got my reticle on the right guy there. These guys keep coming at me, and I know there's a lot of them, and they're also going to be coming at me pretty hard, especially since I just killed one of their guys and then also went for that super cheeky stun. I mean, that's just like, hey, you got to zerg me down now. But here you get to see just where this build will excel, where a heavy armor build would have been dead a long time ago. The heavy armor build would be struggling to get through the keep door by now if it was still alive. But here you can see I've comfortably kited out the entire group. They're still kind of focusing out on us, a couple EP players up here, but I'm just being very careful. There you see they go for the offensive pressure. I'm going to go right into the mist form, purge coming out of it. I have so many dots on me, I actually had to pull 2 purges to get them all off, and I just continue to use my terrain to keep splitting these guys. Now finally I've gotten to a point here where I'm at I'm at a one-on-one with this Sork. He underestimates the firepower, goes in for it on his own, continues to pound the shields. There you see I take him really close. I think he gets to 1k health there. Very, very close call. But then I'm fairly low on resources, especially after that longer runaway, and then trying to burst that Sork down cost quite a bit. And here I find myself in a rather tricky position. Fortunately, I put a bit of pressure into that Nightblade, going to prevent him from trying to come at me really hard. And of course, this Sork seems to have stunned himself with his bolt or something. I'm not even sure. I don't even know what to say. I just walk around the tree, super lucky to line of sight them. That was just fortunate right there. I managed to peel out again, get some resources back, and we are left to fight these two Nightblades. And here's where you get to see, again, that Clouding Swarm coming in kind of clutch. You'll see it in the kill here. These two Nightblades, I know he's going to go for the gank. I do the impromptu dodge roll, also proccing my Skirmisher. Clouding Swarm, teleport to the Archer in the back, poison inject him, and then pop the Clouding Swarm attack a few times to make sure I get the damage on him there. And the other Nightblade, completely dumbfounded, unexpecting the Clouding Swarm, doesn't even he doesn't respond until the other guy's dead, and then I'm left with a rather deadly 1v1. I go for the snipe here, knowing he's going to gap close into the Javelin, and there you see I risk it for the biscuit, get the kill on the Nightblade, and that is the end of that clip. Let's move on to the next one, guys. So here is another just kind of example of that distance firepower you have on this build, plus the amount of kite that you can do on it. It's a very different style of Templar build. I mean, I've greatly enjoyed playing it. Having played kitier Templar builds as well in the past, I think this fell right into my alley. Here you see just the big burst going in on the Sork, and the other DK here, I'm just using my distance, making sure to kite her out. She is not playing a ranged build, so she's not even gap closing into me. Literally no pressure from that lower level DK there. And you can see I'm just pounding on this Sork. He is just smacking his wards, trying to bolt into a safe location. Another Nightblade shows up. We take the Sork down, but lo and behold, here's his group. And we've got the yellows on top of us. The Nightblade that was with me there quickly gets killed, and I've got a decent amount of stamina to work with here, but this is not an ideal situation, as I don't really have a good place to retreat to with all these guys on top of me. So the first thing I do, pop my Clouding Swarm. Here we see the Clouding Swarm working great with that one teleport, and there you see it again, the huge direction change. We lose 4 of the players there. 4 players don't know where I went after that direction change, and it's because I managed to get the teleport in behind the tree onto that other player. I think even the player I grabbed didn't notice that I teleported behind him. Take a stun here, incredibly lucky to have not died yet again. Another EP player coming in, gets a kill on one of these guys as they're looking for me around this tree. They managed to also burst me down here, but I thought that was just a great look at the teleport capabilities of this build. So let's take a look at, I think this is the final piece of footage for this build video. As you can see, we got a larger group of AD players here, and this is going to be a little bit more of group fighting on this build. Of course, this is a very kitey build, so your role in a group fight is more of a damage support than anything else. You're not going to be very up front. You see that we have my fellow pack players up front there doing the tanking job, and I'm just trying to do this, lure one of their players out for a very easy kill. He just finds himself away from the group, lower ranked player, a little inexperienced, and I managed to quickly take him down. Unfortunately, they zerged really hard down on one of our guys there, so we decide that we got to use the tower here, but look at the distance play here. This is just how you're supposed to play, I think in my eyes, especially a ranged stamina build. It works so well, and all we're doing here is we're just using the movement, using the distance. We don't need to heal, we don't need to anything, nothing but that movement and distance, always following with a quick dodge roll right into the mist there, knowing someone's going to gap close into me. It's likely when you take a gap closer as well, it's going to be a stunning gap closer. So always want to make sure to keep yourself, especially when you got a lot of guys on your tail, keep your defenses up. Make sure that they can't stun you easily or get a good burst on you if you're not if you're not facing them. So we managed to lure the AD into this tower. I go into my bat swarm here, and I just start spamming the teleport on these guys. Now, the whole idea behind the teleport in this close quarters fight and using that ultimate was just to deal as much AoE damage as I could. I don't have a lot of AoE on this build, and seeing as my fellow players went for their ult jumps, I decided to go in with them. I think we managed to get 1 or 2 kills there. There you see the snipe into Javelin just to kill the guy in the front line on the enemy group there. Really nasty pick-off there, and that's exactly what you want to do in a group fight with this build. Stand behind your friendly player and absolutely nuke the front line. Maybe not target the tanks, though. You saw that I did manage to target a squishier player there. I get myself locked down a little bit by that Sork, and I go for a quick dodge roll, purge, and just peel around. Unfortunately, I pop out of my mist for that repentance at the wrong time and take that snare. We go to the bat swarm, change directions, teleport to the guy as we see him, and then mist past him. Really great direction change there to kind of survive. Unfortunately, I end up just running into more yellow players. There's quite a few yellow players here, so we're just trying to keep them as split up as possible. And here we go. I find a guy all on his lonesome. He is fully dotted up and pottled. Just a heavy attack to conserve those resources, repent him, and move on to the next target. The next target just peeking around the corner. Maybe he should have helped when he saw I was fighting his buddy. Or maybe he wasn't there in time. He actually is a tankier Templar. We see his Pirate Skeleton Helm go off here. So it's going to take a bit of damage to take this guy down. And he keeps pounding the heals here. He should go for the Purify. I do have him sniped, so his healing is a little bit weaker. He even pops the barrier, and I end up giving up on this target. And I quickly peel back, seeing that there's a bit of pressure on me. And here I am with just me and Jordan. We've got Snowman in here as well, and he's just kind of fighting and kiting, doing his thing. But me and Jordan managed to capitalize on another kill back there, and now we're in a good position on this tower fight. We've got I think 2 dead bodies, or 3 dead bodies here, and yeah, 2. Well, okay, one of them respawned, but here comes I believe that first Templar. So we've got 2 dead bodies now in this location, and if we can continue to lure the AD here, we can continue to wipe them. Here we go. The third one goes down. We've got 2 dead in the middle here. Another EP player has shown up and is putting work into these guys as well. The attrition fight is starting to go in our favor. Here you see the Clouding Swarm just spamming it on these guys. Not necessarily the most powerful ultimate, but super fun and unexpected. Alright guys, so I thought we would end on a couple of fun little videos, just a few little kills for you guys. This is a great kill because this Sork just does not expect the burst, and we counter him really well with block and roll dodge going into our combo. But that is the end of the video, guys. I want to thank you so much for tuning in. If you've got any questions for me on the build, feel free to post them in the comments section. As always, if you guys enjoyed what you saw here, feel free to hit that like and subscribe button. And to end it today, ladies and gentlemen, we've got an epic keep knockdown kill. There you see the double bounce to get him. And he goes for the roll dodge. We're not going to let him get away. Nice little shot there. And this guy steals my repentance. Have a good day, guys. I hope to see you again.